So, Robert, this is my class from NYU. The class is called From Beginning Photographer to Exhibiting Artist. It's a 12-week class, and approximately this is the fourth session, I think. So 4 weeks ago, they theoretically were complete beginners, perhaps just worked with a point and shoot. I'm teaching them manual camera. However, the big deal is in 6 or 7 weeks from now, each one of them is having their own solo show here.
Don't be nervous.
And your work is taking up the front hallway here and is part of the Krappy Kamera exhibition, even though it doesn't look like crap.
Or not.
Or not, exactly. Why don't you tell us about how you did it?
Well, these are probably the product of a lot of happy accidents. And people ask me how I approach doing this, but it's kind of a mystery to me. I'm not really sure what happens. What happens in the camera, I can only keep track of one image at a time. What I'm seeing through the viewfinder is pretty much what I see every time. But as they come together, I have no idea of how it's ultimately going to be. And so it's a lot of trusting in just the instinct of what do you think in front of you has value. And some of it doesn't work, some of it later works out, some of it you can kind of edit where the beginning and the ending is. And the wonderful thing about Photoshop is it allows you to kind of adjust the tonalities so that between the frames there's some differences in exposure. You can kind of adjust those a little bit, but I'd like to keep in mind what I initially entered photography doing, which was exposing film in a dark room, or exposing film in a camera and processing it in a dark room, and keeping those tools very clearly in mind as the model for how I want to proceed with doing these panoramas.
Fabulous. Thank you. So, I mean, that tonality thing is something I'm looking around and seeing is how closely matched tonality is from piece to piece to piece to piece. So I'm guessing that's that's a good part of what you're talking about?
I'm not looking at the tonalities between the pieces, but frankly, one of the wonderful things about working with the toy camera is it doesn't give you too many choices, so you tend to have a common set of behaviors. So all of the exposures are the same. In other words, I'm not adjusting anything and developing or anything. I'm exposing the film, developing everything for the same time, for the same temperature, with the same dilution. And because there's a commonality there, it probably ends up that way. But it wasn't the intention that they be that way, merely that they represent the tones kind of as I remember them.
Got it, okay. All right. Who's got a question for this man?
Where is this?
That is in Milan. There's
Well, so when are we going to go to Milan? So we can,
field trip. I hear field trip.
That's what I'm thinking.
This is the Galleria Emanuele in Milan, and it comes in a sort of an X shape in the center, where there's domes. There's a long dome going in each of the 4 quadrants. And you stand in the middle of this and you're just overwhelmed, but you can't take it all in. Half of it's behind you. And so I decided that I could chop this up and kind of reassemble it and give the overall impression of what being in that space was about. And you know, there's so many happy accidents that you can't plan for.
So this print is actually multiple shots.
Multiple shots, and I guess there may be 6, maybe 7 different exposures, but everything is a guess. Everything is an intuitive decision.
I count way more than 7.
Congratulations, you win. How many do you get?
I stopped at 7. I got the 7 over here.
Oh, okay. But this goes on much longer in the film. And this is kind of an edited version.
Got it.
And you have to make some decisions about what beginning and ending. And I kind of did the ball as a beginning and ending point. But that's sort of an example of the arbitrary nature of what's going on here. You don't know where you're beginning, where you're ending, but you kind of edit after that.
Now you have a lot of pieces here. Do you have a favorite?
Well, I have a favorite. Let's see. There is a piece in the front there I call Wheel Tree that it was sort of the beginning of how he discovered that this happy accident thing could work out. Because there's a farmer in Illinois that built this Christmas tree out of tractor wheels that he had collected and welded together, maybe about 60 feet tall. And you can take a picture of it just as the whole thing, but it was only that, what he constructed. And by photographing it from many different angles and so forth, it was like taking the thing apart and reassembling it my way. And that was kind of the genesis of how I arrived at doing this, is that if you looked at the actual thing, that was great, but if it could be something better than that by process of having a camera that didn't have stops, that you had to stop the film at a certain place, where you could override an exposure and blend in these different things, that was the thing that made me think that that could be a project that I can work on with the happy accident. I mean, it's frustrating to go out with an idea of you wanting to make a photograph and you come back with something you hadn't in mind. I had no idea this was going to look like that. It's better.
I think you'll like what I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
So my dad's favorite camera, he loved cameras and had 50 or 100, something like that. But his favorite was the Olympus Pen S, which was made, it was a cine frame camera. It was made from 1959 to 1961. And when eBay was created, the first thing I did was buy all I could find.
So the price has gone up on these because of you.
It's all because of me, exactly. And my favorite of those had an imperfection. It advanced the film automatically as it was supposed to. I mean, automatically meaning when you wound it, but it didn't do it completely. It did somewhere between 1/3 and 2/3 of an overlap.
This is designed this way?
No. And that became my favorite of all those S's that I had.
And probably recalling these now. Even now, they're trying to get those back to the factory to correct it. And you're buying them out.
There we go. Anyway, similar fashion to what you created here. Obviously, I'm loving your work much, much better than
Very kind of you.
extraordinary.
Good.
More questions?
You make me want to get a Milan there now.
So generally when we do a panorama, it's a continuation, right? It's
Yes.
one shot after the other. But in most of your pictures, they're different shots which you have put together. It's not a continuation.
Well, they exist on the film that way, but you're right in that they were taken not as you would view the scene.
Yeah.
For instance, this was probably 3 or 4 columns in Rome and the Pantheon that the shaft of light just happened to be lighting, and it was just a very narrow area. But I would walk around, and I would snap, and I would move, and I would snap, and so forth. So clearly, that's not going to be holding up anything, but it's a more interesting picture for me to do it that way. But some of them have the appearance of being a panorama, where you could almost plausibly think, and I think your mind kind of pretends that you're assembling reality when in fact it's just repetition, looking at the same thing from a different angle. And the bottom one here, this is one taken in Venice. And in Venice, the streets are very narrow, and the buildings are almost delineated by the sky. We have tiny slices of the sky, but they're all different shapes. And so I was as much photographing the sky as I was the buildings. And I don't know if you can tell, but every other frame I turn the camera upside down.
Yeah.
So there's no logic in any direction in this, either in a continuous scene, but not on the same pathway, same street. And I wasn't even that particularly interested in what was on the street. I was interested in the shape that was defined by the sky.
Very nice. Lovely, thank you.
I have a question. What did you envision from it?
I had an impression that there was an image there to be had because I had some graphic elements, I had light areas and dark areas, and I had some things that were geometric and some things that were not geometric. And I think that probably, if I look back on it, if I'm looking for something to base, putting the camera to my eye, I'll look for the contrast of light and dark, of geographic or geometric versus sort of freeform shapes, and hope that something comes of that. But in this case, I don't know if you can tell, there's a series of steps that are descending, taken from a different angle, one way, 180 degrees the other way, and the shadows from the cypress trees are cast across there, and they're creating a different contrast element to it. So, does that answer your question? Thank you. So I was not thinking.
Well, no, I mean, it's interesting when you think of, you're saying the light and dark, and it works so well here.
Yes. Yeah, that I had a clearer idea what that could be, and this was completely a surprise. Don't know what that's going to bring me. But when I walk around New York, you see the same thing, but it's different. There's more openness in the sky. And so I'm thinking of this photograph, but I'm not thinking that it's going to work out the same way.
What's your advice for somebody who's aspiring to be there on the wall in the next show or maybe subsequent shows?
Well, you know, when I was starting out taking photographs, I had somebody clearly in mind, and you won't guess by these pictures, but I sort of looked at Diane Arbus's photographs, and I said, there's somebody that has captured something that's unique, and I started copying her. And I realized that I couldn't do that. That although I could get a portrait, and there would be certain similarities, I was a different person. And I think I realized that every individual inside of them has something different that makes it unique. And so whatever it is that you do is not going to be what I do, and that's the good thing about it. Because if all these pictures look the same, it wouldn't be interesting. So you just have to pay attention to what's unique to you, and if it makes sense to you, go do that. And forget about any advice about don't do that, because ultimately, if it's strong enough, you're going to do it anyway.
Okay.
That was a good question, a good answer. Because everyone's...
I want to thank you so much. This is great work. You really honor us with it.
Thanks for your interest. I appreciate you coming tonight. Thanks for your questions. They're very good questions. The questions that I would think to ask, and you know, press ahead, make photographs, experiment, have fun. That's what it's all about. Thanks.
Thank you.